You're listening to the Interns to Pros podcast, where you'll learn from some of the most successful impact players in the media, technology, sports, and entertainment industries. How did they land their awesome jobs? What big lessons have they learned along the way? Get ready to take your career to the next level by getting insider knowledge from some of the best in the business. Here's your host, Mitchell Leach II.
It is good to be back. Welcome to the Interns to Pros podcast. Today you are in for something extra special. We've got a phenomenal guest on the show today, Victor Scotti Jr. He is an HR manager, equity strategist, and coach at Google. Victor has global expertise in crafting community-specific strategies that integrate employee experience and belonging with business needs. He's also the founder and chief inspiration officer of Moving Mountains, LLC, which accelerates the possibilities of high-achieving Black boys through curated experiences that inspire innovation, spark creativity, and cultivate dreams. Victor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit more about your background and the road to where you are today.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's good to talk to y'all. I am Victor, born and raised in Chicago on the South Side.
That's right.
So I think it's always important to start there. I think the South Side has invested so much in me. And I'm really glad to be back for the past couple of years as I continue my career in my city and my home. Went to college in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania. It was there where I studied sociology, minored in urban education and Africana studies. So I was really interested in civic engagement, did a lot of work in the West Philadelphia community, and have always been interested in how do we connect, our institutions like schools and businesses to the communities in which we live. And ultimately, I think in which, we serve and partner with. Always thought that I would be working with people in some capacity, but I didn't know it would be in corporate America. So we'll definitely talk about my internship experience at Google, which led me there. But I've done everything here from core human resources work, so working with our people processes and supporting leaders in, the org health and org development of their organizations, to diversity, equity, and inclusion work, so making sure that people are respected and have an equitable experience at work, and then educational equity, so making sure that students, have the tools and the resources that they need, and that we as Google and as a tech industry are proactively, reaching out to communities that have historically been excluded, from our companies, to make sure that we get them in the doors of tech, and specifically Google.
Excellent. Now, you've had a phenomenal career, my man. Now, if you could describe your career journey in one word, what would it be and why?
Yes. So that word, as I was thinking about this, is definitely varied. I've had so many different experiences. I think I've been over on 10 different teams. I was in a rotational program, and then I moved around a lot, all within Google, multiple managers. I have been in 3 different cities. So I started out in the Bay Area for 2 years, New York for 3, and then I've been back home in Chicago for 2. I also did a stint of time in Southeast Asia, on a special assignment. So I was working in our both our Singapore office, which is the hub in APAC, and also our Tokyo office as well. So I think I've been really blessed with a lot of different experiences that I think have given me a ton of perspective, especially because I work so closely with people of all different cultures and backgrounds.
That's phenomenal. Now, speaking about experiences, we're all about internships here. Tell us about your internship experience. What did you do? Where did you do it? And what were a few of the biggest lessons learned from that chapter in your career?
Yeah, so I've had 2 different experiences that I would quickly highlight. The first is about the power of connection. So I actually had a mentor. I got a scholarship through Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
That's right.
As a senior in high school. And then I'm definitely blessed to be in Alpha now. Shout out to Side Chapter, University of Pennsylvania, Fall 10.
All right.
So at the time, my mentor and big brother, his name is Jared. He, passed my resume along. I was looking for an internship. This was the summer after my freshman year. He passed it along within his network. One of his friends from college worked at the Chicago Public Schools with Terrence Patterson, who now lives and works in Memphis, where he's from, as head of the Memphis Education Foundation. I think I got
Nice.
that right. He was the deputy chief of staff at Chicago Public Schools. So I wanted to shout him out because he gave me a chance. And I highlight this story in particular. Not only did I have a phenomenal experience, but it was actually an unpaid internship. And so I know that everyone is not able to do an unpaid internship. And at the time, that wasn't necessarily what I was seeking. But because I asked around through my university, because it was bent towards civic engagement and the public school system, I was actually able to get a grant from Penn while working with the Chicago Public Schools. So just to communicate, there are always options. There might be many ways to still be able to do what you want and, of course, get the funds that you need to live over the summer and for school. So that ended up being a great experience and really introduced me to the world of work, also to what it's like to work, within the C-suite, since he, reported straight to the deputy chief of staff and we were in the office of the CEO. And I think the last takeaway from that was really this intersection of, working. So like, of course, working to make money, which is what we need to do, but also, like purpose and passion. So knowing that I'm passionate about people and education, particularly the most vulnerable in our public education system, which in America are folks of color, that was a really important lesson for me. I think for the next 2 summers, I interned at Google. And the kind of my story to that was also a unique one. Penn is a very pre-professional place. There's so many people who come in wanting to be investment bankers, private equity folks, doctors, lawyers. Most people have something that they can name that they want to be. And a lot of people come to Penn because of Wharton, which is, the top business school, I think, in the nation. So, me like that, I wasn't in Wharton and that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. But because of some of that pressure, I went to a lot of the business fairs and things like that. I actually met a Google recruiter there and really connected with them. And they introduced me to HR, or, as we call it at Google, people operations. And so that really opened my eyes to the fact that you could work in the tech industry for a company that we actually use every day, but still work with people. So I interned for 2 summers. The first summer I was doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work. The second summer, K-12 education outreach work. And it was really in that second summer, again, where I was able to say, okay, I can still work in this for-profit space, make money, more money than I actually thought I would be making with the interest that I have, but also still positively impact my community. So I think when I look at those experiences overall, I learned a lot about, that intersection between profit and purpose. I learned a lot about advocating for myself. My internships with Google were in the Bay Area. So, being in new environments and kind of figuring out how to live. And then also, which I think is important for all of us, but I think, for those who don't have other family members in corporate America, it's important to just like understand that space, understand what's spoken and what's not spoken, and being able to really navigate it. And I think that my internship set me up well to be able to do that in a full-time capacity.
That's phenomenal. Now, you gave a lot of tremendous nuggets there, but add on to how would you describe the value of an internship to all the students out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like internship is absolutely invaluable. There's nothing that you can learn, in a classroom or even from, talking to folks. That's not the same as actually being inside, a company. Again, whether it ends up being a great experience or you actually don't like it, I think that's another piece of the value of an internship. You actually get to try something, for a defined period of time. Hopefully you're also getting paid for it and you emerge, saying, Did I like it? Did I not like it? Maybe you always wanted to be, a doctor, for example, and you interned at a hospital and you end up hating it, or like you hate the flow, of hospitals. You hate the energy. Maybe, that's not what you want to do. Or maybe instead of being a doctor, you want to go into administration. So I think that it can give you so much insight that's literally impossible to get just from reading, or kind of like analyzing, a particular pathway. I think you get to get in, get your hands dirty, and really do some projects and figure out what life would be like, if you actually did this thing as your vocation.
No doubt. No doubt. Now, here at Interns to Pros, we are big about leveraging the opportunity of proactivity. Now, how would you describe the power of being proactive, both during the student's campus experience and their career overall?
Totally. So I think the best thing you can do in terms of proactivity is to, number one, like put yourself, in spaces and around people that are interesting to you. The best part about, for me, being in college and being on campus, although I know with COVID on campus takes on a different meaning, but it's all the resources. So those different seminars, I know, with the Black Greek letter organizations, we had a lot of panels, and there's just so many opportunities, for you to hear new information and to connect, with different people. I think that proactivity and putting yourself in those spaces is really key. Again, it's a way for you to soak in knowledge, for you to think about things differently. And you're able to do that. And it's like an hour or 2 hours, of your time on campus. I also think that when you are meeting people, and I think we talk a lot about networking, but I find that a lot of students, and I did this, and then when I changed my approach, it really, helped me. We're good at meeting folks, but you have to follow up. So I think, to meet someone like at a fair or at an event where they're meeting 50 other people, there are definitely ways to stand out and make yourself memorable. But the thing that a lot of folks are not doing are following up with that email. It could be to thank them. It could be with further questions. It could be, maybe let's schedule a time for coffee if that person is local. And what you're doing is really building relationships. So, through, if I told you more about my time at work, and definitely, as you heard in my internships, it was all about those relationships that I built, whether before my internships or during or after, that have sustained me. And that's how opportunities have continued to come. So I think the best way to leverage opportunities and be proactive is to stay in touch and make sure that people know what it is that you're interested in.
Phenomenal advice. That's something that I've taken seriously, and it has been a big blessing to me in my internship journey and in my career, whether it was informational interviews, attending different events. You always will not only want to have a connection, but you want to keep the connection strong. So that's sound wisdom, my man. Now, many current students and recent grads have a lot of anxiety about job interviews. What advice would you give them for the interview process, pre-interview, during, and post-interview?
Totally. So pre-interview, I would say research everything you can, about the company. And now with like LinkedIn and some like recruiters will give you the interviewer's name, you can look on LinkedIn and learn about them too. But, you might or might not have that information. But what you do have at your fingertips, you have LinkedIn for sure, which you can look at the company's profile. You can look at, the different jobs that are open. Something that I do is I click people and I look at like the diversity, of the employees who work there. Because that's something that's really important to me, inclusion. You can also go to websites like Glassdoor. People talk about the interview process in general. A lot of them are full-time interviews, but most internships is a pared down process anyway, so you can never be too prepared. So I actually think that's a great kind of hack and tip. Also, you can see what people think about the company there as well. And also research how the company makes money. Because ultimately, no matter what function you're in, whether you're on the business side, more of a shared services side, HR. Ultimately, companies have a bottom line. They have to answer to their shareholders. Usually first and foremost. I feel like as we get more towards, the intersection of profit and purpose, that is changing, but you want to be armed with that information before you walk into that interview. So no matter where the questions go, from behavioral, to more business aligned, to the values of the organization, you've at least read those things and kind of let them soak in. And then, you're even more prepared to answer those questions and to have those informed, conversations. I think that during the interview, I think you want to be as attentive as possible. You also, want to be as engaged as possible as well. And your questions are really important because just as they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. So, and this kind of straddles pre and during, but you want to think about what are the things that are important to you. And this is where talking to, other folks who have worked for a little while longer, or maybe students who have done internships before you, what are some of their pain points or things that they loved? And then you think about what is it that's important to you? Those are the types of questions that you want to ask. So, if I was on the job market right now, I would absolutely ask companies, what have you been doing, during this time of COVID, during this time of, repeated time, because this is not the first by any means time this has happened, racialized violence, right? Like, what are your policies and practices? What is going on? Those are questions that I would want to ask, because if you're attaching your name and your brand to something, you want to be super clear on what that is. And then I would say post-interview, you definitely want to follow up, send thank you notes or thank you emails. I always ask the recruiter, for the emails of the folks that I met with, if that's something that they're able, to provide. And I think also a part that, a lot of folks don't do, but I think is really important, especially when you're interviewing for internships, because you have your whole career ahead of you, is really that self-reflection, right? Like, what do you think you did well? What do you think were your areas of improvement? After you do a couple of interviews, are there certain questions that at this point you should just be prepared to answer? So I even write out some of those answers before every interview, even if I've been asked before, just to make sure that I'm crystal clear on what my take and what my answer is.
Invaluable. Simply invaluable. Now, do you have, as we get ready to close the show, do you have a final piece of advice for current student and recent grads hoping to go from interns to pros?
Yeah, I think that this is a tough and unprecedented time. And I think that that's putting it lightly. And so I think that, while some of us have, these invaluable nuggets and different pieces of wisdom to pass on, I think that students right now are entering into and engaging in a market, in a world that is completely different. And so, but with that, though, I think there's so much opportunity. So again, I think that we're at a place where companies are really kind of reinventing the ways that they work. They're looking at things differently. So I think that there's so much more opportunity to infuse who you are and your own values. And of course, that would be a value add to any company, that you work for and work with. And so I think that, one of the things that I would say is to be as authentic as you wish to be, because I think that that's actually really valued right now. It's really that critical thinking, that how do we do this differently? How do we kind of shake things up? That's what companies are looking for right now. And I think, as students, especially at this time, you're best positioned to do that. So literally be yourself. And I think that will pay off.
Victor, thank you so much for blessing us with your time and invaluable wisdom. You have been tremendous.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to joining you again someday.
No doubt. No doubt. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Interns to Pros podcast. We hope you enjoyed the insider wisdom and industry insights. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you like to listen: iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and more. Now is the time to maximize your opportunity in today's marketplace, regardless if you're a student, professional, or employer. For more information on how we can help you or your company do so, visit internstopros.com. That's interns, 2, pros.com. Until next time, never stop learning and do your best to master the art of excellence in every aspect of your journey. Congrats in advance.